Oh my God.
Hi,
girlies.
Hi, Jenny.
Hi, Bria.
How's it going?
It's good. We have a very special guest today.
Who is the special guest?
It is my dad, the famous Marc Levine.
Welcome, Marc, to High Girlies.
Hi, Dad.
Hi. What's happening?
We're
on camera, huh?
Yeah, we are on camera. We are recording. This is all happening. This is kind of funny for me because we're trying to see like what our guest layout is in Bria's new apartment. So you're kind of like our guinea pig.
Oh, I like being a guinea pig.
Yeah,
you're the first
a good
guest in
guinea
the
pig.
new place.
Yeah.
It's cozy.
Yeah, it's a little cold, but
I don't know if cozy is the word I would use to
Cozy?
describe it.
Yeah, I felt real comfortable. I had lunch, had a nice salad.
yeah.
It's not as cold as it is in Playa del Rey living at the beach, you know?
Oh,
True.
but it's been really windy lately.
Yeah.
But
God, it has been.
we were talking about wedding stuff because my dad. Do you know what's going on with the wedding?
Some, but I've been distancing myself.
Where do you stand
Pretty
with the
chaotic.
wedding? Like, do you have a lot of opinions about the vibe or the decor, anything?
No, not really. I'm letting it all be decided by my wife and daughter and the parties that are involved. But for me, it's a little bit over the top. So I'm just kind of watching it unfold. I just got a new suit made for the, for the wedding. I'm
okay.
gonna look sharp, but other than that, I'm going with the flow.
That's great.
Is there anything that you would like to see? You would like expect or want?
From the wedding planning?
Mm-hmm.
No, I think it's all happening the way it's supposed to, and everything's coming together. And
Look at that parent.
I mean, what if there
That's a
ends
good
up
parent.
being a food that you don't like? A drink
doesn't
that you
exist.
don't like, a color that just irks you.
no, not
Of
really.
music.
I'm pretty
Oh
easygoing.
yeah, music. Ooh.
There'll be some nice music. I'm sure it's going to be a great event. So there's nothing that really, I don't feel negative about anything. I don't feel anything irks me about it. And
Wow.
I think it's going to be a lot of fun and an exciting day.
Oh my gosh. See, Jenny is a mini Marc Levine, I think, to all of us because she's so chill. And I just feel like sitting here with you two, you're just so chill. You're so relaxed. You're so calming. And I see where you get it from now.
I mean, I have my moments of rage, but that definitely I get from my Leo mother for sure.
Is your mom an August Leo or a July Leo?
She's a July Leo. She's July 30th. And then my aunt is August 2nd, I think.
Oh my God, that's my nephew's
Or maybe,
birthday.
no, I think she's August 4th. Because my grandparents' anniversary is August 2nd.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would you
But-
say your mother is stressing out about the wedding?
No comment.
Understatement. Big understatement, huh? That's why I'm so chill, because she's so stressed out. I don't want to even
There needs to be balance.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it's great to have a parent like him, but my mom was just freaking out about, because we finally picked our bridesmaids dresses.
Woohoo!
Very exciting. I'm excited to see the other options for you specifically, because I know you weren't super thrilled, but it's just not your vibe. I think the other ones are more your vibe, though, the non-floral patterns.
But of course, if you like it, I would love to wear it.
yeah, I appreciate that.
So
But
whatever
my mom
is easiest.
My mom was like, "You picked that? Oh, no, I ordered a dress in that color. What am I going to do?" And we were just kind of like, "We'll figure it out."
I think
That's
it's
just the tip of the
unifying.
iceberg.
It's unifying to have us all in the same
Yeah.
kind of thing.
I am surprised, though, that Mom let you on the podcast.
Okay, so you guys discussed you coming on the podcast before with her. So how did that go?
Did we discuss that? I think you said, "Oh, your dad would be great." And then you were like, "Yeah, if you'll have me on the podcast." And
then you
like,
repeated that to me, and I was like,
Yeah.
wait, actually, we should.
and then I was like, "Oh, okay, Bria's into it. Like, would you be into it?" And then he was like, "Yes." And then the next step was, "Okay, how do we tell Mom?" But then did you tell her?
Yeah, I told her. I said I saw their podcast. I thought it was very interesting and creative. I said, I'd like to be on it, or you could have me on it, you know, as a guest. And then I told your mother, and she said, why would you want to do that? And I said, I don't know, you know, I offered to do it. They want me to be on it, and so I'm doing it, you know. And she didn't really kick and scream too hard.
Wow.
Wasn't really supportive of it, but didn't kick and scream too hard. And she wasn't going to stop me anyway, you know. She could have tried.
Oh, period.
Work. Well, I mean, sometimes Carol Levine will surprise you in really pleasant ways, which is that's the fun part about her, you know. Oh, I hit that. Anyway, one thing that you guys have in common is you're both Scorpios.
You're a Scorpio?
Yeah.
Wow. An October Scorpio or November?
October.
Okay, so
October
that's
30th.
why. July Leos are like November Scorpios, and August Leos are like October Scorpios.
Oh, because he's not.
You're not a typical Scorpio.
You are.
Yes.
He's
You're
not.
more relaxed.
Yeah.
Ah.
But he very much is stubborn in a good way, like you. Like should we talk about what we smoked first?
Yeah.
And then we'll get back into this?
Yeah. What do we smoke?
Well, I brought a stizzy. For those who have watched this podcast, we've had fizzies, and now we have a stizzy. And
We're coming on up.
you can see it says it on the thing, just in case. But yeah, what did you think of this?
It was very pleasant. I took a couple puffs and it was like relaxing, you know.
Yeah.
I feel the same way. Those are a little strong to me. but-
Yeah. You don't need a lot. A little goes a long way,
For
for
sure.
sure. And I like that you can just go 1, 2, and you're done. There's not like a mess, and
Yeah, that's so true. It's not the full experience. It's just like
we just hit it and quit it.
It's true. It's different than having a beer.
Yeah.
Very true.
I mean, like, what? So let's get into it. What's really going on today?
what's really going on is that Marc is giving us would you say the journey of weed, the history of weed in LA?
I called
for the
it
past few decades?
Yes. He is going to be our historian of the marijuana plant through the decades. This is a history lesson for you all.
Y'all act like we don't bring on experts, but
He is
here we are.
he is an
Honestly,
expert.
we only bring on experts because we brought Nico on, a restaurateur, expert, business person, and now we have the historian.
Yes.
We are really giving them what they need.
Yeah, and I want to introduce you a little bit so you can kind of tell us more a little bit about yourself, but you are my dad. You've been my dad for 30 plus years, but you're also pretty much an LA native. You were born in Brooklyn, but then you guys moved here when your mom was pregnant, actually, and flew on a plane from New York to LA that took more than 5 hours because back in the day it was a different kind of plane. And then you've lived in LA for what? Your 67 years or something?
Yeah.
So, and you grew up in the Dogtown era, and you knew some of those people, and you grew up with the surf culture, like the 60s surf culture, which I think is so quintessential in the golden era of LA. Like when you and your sister would talk about they had lifeguard towers that were dedicated to each high school, or even the different social groups. Tower 15 was where the Soches were, but the
What's
surfers.
a Soch?
Yeah, let's get into it, Dad.
Tell us
What's a
what was
Soch?
happening. Yeah.
What's a Soch? That's a good question. I never was one, so I didn't get to know
His
them
sister
very well.
was,
But they were
right?
sort of, more affluent kids, very, kind of kept people away from their group. They thought very highly of themselves. They
The
looked-
cruel
plastics.
the
Yeah,
cruel
they looked down on
intentions of the
others.
60s.
Yeah. My lifeguard towers were number 8 and number 2. Number 2 was the furthest south in Santa Monica. Then you had Venice Beach, and number 8 was where a lot of the kids from Hamilton High hung out. It was very popular. We had volleyball courts there.
What was kind of the reputation of the Hamilton High kids? What group was that?
I think they were just average, normal, middle class, upper middle class kids.
Okay.
A lot of good families. focused on going to college. You know, very few of us went to private schools back then. That was unheard of. But it was a nice, you know, nice group.
Why was your tower 2 and 8? Like, who hung out at 2 and 8?
8 was really where most of the kids from Hamilton took the Santa Monica bus in, you know, down Pico Boulevard. So we kind of gravitated there. But me being a kind of person that liked to explore, you know, I'd kind of hang around and go to different spots. And I liked the vibe down at Tower 2. And it was a little more diversified. The waves were a little better down there, you know. And, so I used to gravitate between those two. But never the other towers in the middle. You know, I just didn't feel connected to it. Didn't know as many people.
Wow.
Isn't that wild?
That is.
2 was further south in Santa Monica, and then number 8 was right next to Santa Monica Pier. And that was the main stretch. And then you go north of the pier, it was more Palisades, you know, Jonathan Club.
Pally High.
Pally High, that kind of, yeah, absolutely. Chautauqua had a lot of Pally High and stuff.
So you wouldn't really go up there? Because, like, what are you going to talk to them about?
You don't know them. It's their turf.
Oh, so they're keeping you out.
Well, it was just a lot of it, you know, we weren't really driving, you know, it was like mid-teens. I mean, I started driving right away at 16, but, you know, we had transportation issues. So I ride my bike from West LA. I take the bus, you know, a lot of bus, you know, I remember I forget which bus it was, but it was a blue bus down Pico. We'd end up at Station 8. It was the easiest place to get to. It we wouldn't really connect to go further north, you know, very often on buses.
But tell us, like, what it was like growing up in the 60s in LA. Like, you know, you move here from Brooklyn, you move into the Valley and then move to West LA. And, like, what was that like? Like, I know when we've talked about it, like, the 10 freeway didn't exist, which is a major freeway in Los Angeles.
The 10 freeway, is that recent?
Well, I'll give you a little background because I have seen a lot of change in this city. You know, I was born in 1953. We moved here in 57. I was in elementary school, you know, into the early 60s. I remember no 10 freeway. You know, the Interstate 10 wasn't finished until maybe the 63 or 64. I remember playing on a dirt mound where Robertson and Venice Boulevard are, and they were building the tunnel for to go over the boulevard for the freeway. So it was not completed.
Wow.
And there was a trolley car that went from down Venice Boulevard to downtown into Culver City, and there was a railway, you know, system, and there was no West LA College. It was a wetland, you know, or it wasn't really, it was a wetland and also just vacant land. We used to find fossils in there and go hiking up there. I mean, it was undeveloped. Can you imagine that? No 10 freeway, no West LA College, all dirt fields. When I was when I got my first dirt bike, I used to ride motorcycles in there, and they'd chase us out. You know, it was Hughes Summa Corporation, and we could ride all the way down to Playa del Rey on dirt land and wetlands. You know,
Can you
when
imagine?
I was 13 on a dirt bike.
No.
In LA.
Yeah, in Los Angeles. I mean, it was that less cluttered and undeveloped.
Wow.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine it not being developed here. It's just so huge. At this point, there's no room to add in new stuff. Like, we're done.
Yeah. I mean, at least in the LA County area. But it is kind of wild, like, being someone who saw it as, like, I don't want to say small town, but, like, developing town into, like, a major mecca of the world. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I think the whole world's felt it. You know, you go to place, the population's exploded, and we're indicative of that in Los Angeles. But it's really been tremendous here. It was over 3 billion people on the planet now. I think in the 50s it was.
No, there's almost 7 billion.
Whatever it is, it's, you know, in the 50s it was a lot less population. And I grew up, you know, around families that had 4 children average. You know, 3 or 4 children, and I've just seen a lot of, you know, growth and explosion here. I remember, you know, I sail a lot now. I'm in Marina Del Rey, and I take boats out of there. You know, I'm in a couple of yacht clubs, and we own boats, you know, in a co-op. And I remember when there was just swampland there. I mean, I can't believe how much change I've seen in my lifetime, you know, my short lifetime.
The other part of what's interesting, I think, about growing up in LA for you is that, especially like what I have read, like in like Daisy Jones and the Six, and then like, you know, Flea's book and how he goes into like what like Hollywood was like this crazy place, but then at the same time like the Vietnam War is happening and like weed is becoming prominent. So like what's your like first memory of hearing about weed or seeing weed for the first time?
Okay, that's a good question. And boy, do I remember the Vietnam years really well, too. I could tell you a little bit about that after I answer the weed question. You know, I grew up in the city, watched a lot of growth and development. You know, definitely was a beach child. You know, my mom took us down to the Newport Beach and rented a cottage for a month. And I just always loved the water. And, you know, so I was around the surf culture a lot at the beaches. I mean, you mentioned the Dogtown boys and the Z boys. I used to see them all surfing. I used to go to POP Pier all the time and surf in the Cove and in the Tees, and that was near Station 2. And, you know, so I was around a lot of that culture, and there was definitely weed being smoked and a lot of drugs being used. You know, I remember in the late 60s, early 70s, when I was in my mid to late teens, you know, you saw a lot of that. And I never really was much of a drug type. I didn't like hard drugs. I didn't really like the way alcohol made me feel. But I remember, I think I was about 15 and a half or 16, you know, these guys were passing around a marijuana joint, and I tried it, and it's like, I tried it, you know, like being curious. And, you know, we saw it around a lot. And then, you know, you mentioned Vietnam. So that was my first exposure, you know, like around 15 and a half.
At like a party?
I think it was a party, or it might have been a party, but it definitely had to do with some of the people I knew from the beach who were experimenting with things. And, you know, but it might have been a party or a beach party. I don't remember exactly. And boy, Vietnam, that was wild. You know, a lot of people were coming back from the war and used a lot of marijuana over there to cope with things. And I almost got drafted, but I didn't. You know, when I was 17 and a half, I had to register for the draft board, and my parents were really nervous, but I was the first year of the lottery for the birthdays, and my birthday date was 345. So I wasn't going to get drafted, but, you know, some of my friends did, and I had some older friends. I have a good close friend today who's an ex-Vietnam vet, and they smoked a lot of marijuana over there, I'll tell you.
He one time, the friend that he's talking about, ate a lollipop that we gave him from a weed store that had 100 milligrams in it. And like the Tootsie Roll owl, he went a 1, a 2, a 3, and ate it in like one bite. The whole freaking lollipop that was 100 milligrams. We were on a boat, and the boom getting out of the harbor, like the thing that swings with the sail on it, hit him in the head, and he was gushing blood that my dad had to like get. We're not even out of the harbor. We're like, cruising at like maybe 5 miles per hour, and the boom hit him because he was so high he didn't know. And I was like, oh my God, are you okay? And he was like, oh yeah, I'm fine. Like, didn't even feel it. But I feel like Vietnam War is what brought kind of marijuana into like the pop culture of it, because people were coming back and
I can't believe that people were smoking weed in Vietnam. Wouldn't that just induce so much anxiety?
Well, you have so much anxiety from
Exactly.
killing and being in war that on your downtime you need to like cope with your trauma that's enduring, right?
Know, but I wonder if sometimes that would make you even more anxious.
Oh, like more paranoid?
Yeah.
I think a lot of it's an individual thing too. Like, you know, some people may be more prone to addicting substances, not just marijuana, other substances. And these things are around in society, you know, and I'm very glad that I have seen the evolution of this being decriminalized and not ruining people's lives, you know, because I don't think it's that harmful and deleterious to somebody's life. You know, it's some states or the feds schedule it as like as dangerous as heroin or something. And so that I think is a good thing that NORML and the other agencies have, you know, political agencies have really decriminalized it and not stigmatized people and created deviant smithing, you know, which is a sociological term, which I'm going to put a horseshoe on you like you're a deviant, you know, because you did something wrong. So that's a healthy thing, you know, then I've been very supportive of that. Personally, for me, you know, whether it's alcohol, marijuana, or even other drugs, you know, because I was a pharmaceutical rep for years. I was around all kinds of pharmacokinetics and could sample things if I wanted to, you know. I mean, and it's like, personally for me, I'm not an addictive type, you know. I mean, I never really drink much. It's around, I see it. Marijuana's around, I see it. I may have a drink occasionally or a puff occasionally or something, but I'm not predisposed to that kind of problem, you know. And it's sad when someone does have a substance problem. Marijuana is interesting. I've seen people use it to help them get off of other addictions, you know. Like I had a friend who was an alcoholic and he almost died from it, and we've been friends since childhood. And the doctor was prescribing other drugs for him to treat the alcoholism, you know, Valium and other tranquilizers and stuff. And he said, why am I taking all this stuff when I'll try marijuana, you know? And it helped him with the detoxing, you know, and the getting over the addiction. And he now he's like occasional smoker, you know, of it. Even maybe he wants to go to bed or something to help him sleep. And, you know, actually, medicinally, there are applications for marijuana.
Oh, yeah.
You can even get the THC without the psycholytic effect, you know, from the dispensaries. It's incredible for nausea. You know, that's why cancer patients started to use it to stimulate their appetite, to help them cope with the side effects of chemotherapy. You know, when I go sailing, people get seasick.
Yeah.
And
we smoke weed on the boat instead of eating.
yeah,
or
or
taking
you can
Dramamine.
take it orally, and it's an incredible antiemetic, you know, which is a medical term for nausea.
Or you can just have THC instead of you can have CBD instead of THC.
You know, and I won't get on a boat where people are drinking. When I'm a skipper of a boat, or I don't.
That's
It's like I don't
right.
want to be on your boat, and I'm not drinking when I'm a skipper. I might have a drink when I get back to the dock or something. But it's pretty uncanny when people use marijuana and they don't get seasick. And you know, that's where the medicinal side of it's come in. I know it's good for other medical applications too. I know in my pharmacology training they found it relax smooth muscle could help with, you know, asthma attacks, with, you know, anxiety states.
So they were already kind of looking at it medicinally back then when you were working in pharmaceuticals.
Absolutely, the AMA knew there was medical applications. There's a lot of inhibitions about researching some of the applications of it because it's a scheduled narcotic with the feds. There's a lot of socio-political stuff. I know when I was in these big pharma companies, you know, I worked for a very large, I'm not going to name a name, but, you know, large Fortune 100 pharma company, and they're threatened by things, you know, they've got sales, they've got marketing going on. There's a lot of inhibition of actually studying it for what it can do, but I've seen positive, you know, effects of it. And like, again, I would say I'm so glad it's decriminalized in California and many states, and the stigma's been removed.
Do you think doctors, because like I feel like if you go to a doctor and you're like your friend, I have this addiction or I have this, like they're not going to tell you to go smoke marijuana or even take CBD because they're going to prescribe you a medication. And like, do they benefit from that with the pharmaceutical companies?
I think, you know, knowing doctors, I've worked with them, you know, in my profession as, you know, representing manufacturers of medical products. I think they have to be careful because they're in a community and they have to follow community standards. They have to be careful they're not stigmatized or ostracized. We did get medical cards from doctors, you know, when you needed a marijuana medical card, and they would prescribe it.
When did that start happening?
I think it still happens today, but when it wasn't used, when it wasn't available, you know, for recreational use through dispensaries, there were doctors who would prescribe it, you know, and give you medical cards. But I think generally doctors have to be careful to not go outside of what community standards are, what norms are, and they have a reputation and that type of thing. So it's not going to be probably prescribed, you know, like if you have nausea, they're going to prescribe a pharmacological probably, or an over-the-counter pharmacological.
That's where the stigma, I feel like, is still really not caught up to like what's going on in the real world right now. Because I feel like back in the day, like you were saying, like, when was the first time you got your medical marijuana card? Like, what year was it?
I don't even remember, but it was probably 15 years ago when it first became available.
And now you can go buy it recreationally, but I feel like the doctors or like our medical society, when it comes to like naturopath, like they're not even there because they don't want to lose their license. you know, and there's like, I feel like a stronghold on the government by these big pharmaceutical companies to not deviate from like these medications that they can charge so much for, you know? So, but I want to go back to a little bit of like what it was like in like the 60s and 70s and 80s even with marijuana, because like you guys have talked about, I've heard your generation talk about like Thai sticks, and like, you know, everyone said like there's even a brand that's called like Daddy's weed, like, oh, it's like it's like what your parents used to smoke, it's not as strong. So can you tell us like a little bit like what is a Thai stick, what was weed like back then, and like how is it different from now?
Okay, that's a good question. I never knew what a Thai stick was until I saw one.
don't know what that
and
is.
Somebody showed it to me. It's on a stick, and there was Thai weed, you know, wrapped around it with string, and you would pull it off, and it was very potent, you know. And that's how I learned about it. And somebody said, "Hey, I got some Thai stick. Let me see what does it look like."
Did you smoke it as a stick?
No, you'd pull it off, and you'd either roll it or you'd pack it in a pipe or some type of a
You
device.
pull it off of a stick?
Yeah.
Like a sticky stick?
Just like a long stick, you know, maybe like what you'd see on a shish kebab, you know, and it would just be like wrapped around it.
But
and
was it sticky?
No, it was a stick, literally a stick. The
Why?
weed wasn't really sticky, you know, and I don't know, they were like $20 a stick or whatever, $10 a stick, you know, back then.
So maybe it was like the loose weed.
No, actually, it came wrapped.
No, but like the scraps.
Well, yeah, somehow they would get the leaf and wrap it around a stick. You probably you don't even see that today.
No.
I've never seen that. I've
Yeah.
never heard of
So there's
it.
a piece
I
of
don't know
history.
What is going on right now? That's crazy.
You know, it's a long way from now. You go into a dispensary and you're like, yeah, I'm having trouble sleeping. Do you have anything to help me sleep? You know, and do you have anything for nausea? I mean, I've had some sleep issues, you know, and I've taken this formula called Camino, and it like put me right to sleep, you know.
We
and
love
I mean, it was
Camino.
great, you know, and I'm like, hey, and thank God I could go into a place and buy it, you know, legally, and no smoking, you know, and it's very relaxing. So, you know, that's nice that's available. There was another one we used to get, Colombia, you know. Hey man, you know anybody? You have to find a connection, you know. It was like
Colombia.
Yeah. Anybody got any? It was supposedly
What's
maybe it was
Colombia?
grown in Colombia, you know. And there was Sensimilla with the little red hairs, you know. But you'd always like, hey, who's the connection? You know, do you have a connection? Because you couldn't get it unless you had a connection. I don't know how the stuff got distributed, where it got to the end user, but you're always looking for a connection, you know, somehow. And then you found a connection. He'd be your dealer, and you'd find stuff, you know, that way. That's how it got out into the market.
Like when we were,
we definitely did.
you guys had random little like strains that you would ask for.
I didn't
and
really
stuff.
smoke weed like a lot until college, but I think there was a point. Well, there was like a time like when people started smoking in high school, when I did at 15 or 16. You could go get a medical marijuana card, but you had to be 18 to go get it. So then there were people who knew people who could get you weed, this, that, and the other, but I never bought in it. But there was like that kind of like eclipsis of like, you could have a card and you could go get weed, but then like, or you don't because you don't want to spend the money to go get a card. And so there were still people dealing and stuff.
I see.
Nico went to a weed dealer for into our relationship.
His own connection?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he was his high school dealer.
Yeah, that's how it got out.
For like 15 years. He was like, I feel bad. I can't stop going to him. I'm supportive of his child.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
But then eventually I was like, okay, just go to the dispensary. And so then, yeah, like he's been going for like 8 years or something. But in the beginning,
Wow.
Yeah.
Something I want to know, just hearing you talk about that in the presence of your dad, like when I was growing up, my parents were so anti-weed. I could never imagine having a chill parent who you can talk about this with. When did you find out that Jenny was smoking weed, or when did she find out that you smoked weed?
Oh, that's a good question. We were on a surfing trip in Costa Rica. And I invited my friend Dave and his son and my
I
friend
love
Bob.
that you remember this as much as I remember.
My friend Bob, and he's the guy that got lost in the airport because he ate a brownie on the plane, and we said, Bob.
At 4 a.m.
I said, Bob, you shouldn't be doing that, And then we lost him in the Miami airport. I said, you need to be sober here, buddy.
He
we're
was like
traveling.
in line for Chick-fil-A, and we were like, hello, we're over here.
Yeah. So he goes, I got to go get something to eat. I got the munchies. I'm hungry. I said, don't get lost. This is Miami. It's like a maze. You're going to get lost in here,
So you were witnessing this.
Oh, yeah. And pro tip, I don't know if you know this. If you eat an edible and you fly because you're above altitude, you're going to feel it a lot more than if you ate it here.
Oh,
it's like
God.
drinking.
Yeah, you have to be very careful because
Pro tip.
dose titration, talking about my pharmacology training. You have to be very careful when you ingest something because you can get like no feeling, and then all of a sudden it gets absorbed and you can get pounded, and you should really be careful, like underdose it. If it says this is a dose, like a quarter of this or half of this or something, take a quarter of it, and let it feel what it's like, because if you're smoking, imbibing that way, it's gradual, like you take 1 or 2 puffs and then you leave it alone. So it's hard to titrate the response. You have to be very careful with edibles, I think, because that's a whole different mode.
Oh, we know.
So anyway, to answer everybody's experience. I had a friend one time I golfed with, and he goes, "I'm freaking out, man." I'm like, and he goes, "I gotta go to the hospital." And by the way, I don't know if anybody who's died from a marijuana overdose. I don't think I've had bets with people they couldn't find evidence of that. But you do.
I've had times where I've taken an edible and I was like, I'm going to be the first person to overdose on weed right now.
What?
You just drink.
Because I was freaking out.
Yeah, I had my friend just don't go to the hospital. Just drink like a gallon of water and flush it out.
Go to McDonald's.
It's water soluble,
You need to go to Taco Bell.
Yeah.
In and out.
So anyway, getting back to the question. So she
yes.
corners me in the hotel room at this surf camp, and Dad, do you smoke weed? And I'm like,
no. Okay, hold on.
Anyway, you cornered me. I didn't know how to answer.
This is what happened.
Go ahead and phrase it.
Well, so context. So first of all, I remember. So my dad and I have a very special relationship, and what I mean by that, beyond just like being father-daughter #girl-dad, is that like he has said to me, like, you've asked very profound questions as a young child. Like, I remember
You are a question asker.
She is, boy.
Oh
yeah, I
my
am. I don't know
gosh.
why. Maybe I don't know why. But I remember asking, and then I remember you telling me that I asked this. But like coming back from Sunday school one time, and I was like, Dad, why did they make Adam before Eve?
Oh, I was thinking the same thing. You were just going to say that.
Yeah.
I remember that one, and I'm like, whoa, that's a good question from a little one.
What did you say?
I don't know how I answered it, but it was a challenging question.
That is
How
a
old was
challenging
I?
question.
Like 6 or 7, something like that.
You have been
I have
curious
been a
from birth.
feminist since I was
Period.
6 years
Yeah.
old.
Oh
Like,
my
I was like, that's
God.
fucked up. Like, we need Eve more than Adam.
Period.
But anyway, so that, and then I remember,
You got into a fight with Tom Likas one time, too, on the radio. I remember.
tell Bria who that is.
He was a talk show host who was like always this, chauvinistic kind of theme. And, and she was really pissed off at something she was hearing. So she called in and gave it to him,
In high school.
And he talked to her. And it was
My
just,
dad would listen to like different talk radio shows to get like different opinions, like watching CNN versus Fox News to see what the sides are saying. And this guy, he's just like a, like, let me get your goat kind of guy. Like,
What does that mean?
like provocative, but like,
Okay. He's trying to make people mad.
and create an audience that way, He was good. It was a good
Yeah.
show.
but he said something, I don't know what it was about, and I got really mad. I think it was about women because he always was like putting them down or saying like Obama, something, I don't know, something political. But then what I was going to say was, as a kid growing up, I feel like there were so many commercials about like, don't do drugs, don't smoke, don't do this.
yeah.
And every time they would come on, I remember Mom would be like, yeah, don't smoke. Like, remember, don't do drugs. Don't do it. Don't do it. You'll die. You'll get chlamydia and you'll die. No, I'm just kidding. That's a Mean Girls quote for you. But I remember like asking you guys when in middle school people started to smoke weed and being like, did you guys ever smoke weed? Like, well, being an only child, I only have them to ask questions. I don't have a
Right.
sibling to be like, what's really going on? And I remember you telling me I've only smoked weed one time, and it was at a party, and I got too high, and I'll never do it again.
That is literally the same exact thing my dad told me.
Well, there you go.
I told you that?
That is the same story. That is the dad's story.
But then then we really had it out in Costa Rica, and I really had a heart-to-heart talk.
Then I feel like I had the wool pulled over my eyes. So like when we went to Costa Rica, it was my freshman year, summer of college, and so like we went with Dave and Bob and Dave's son, Mike. We were hanging out, and like, I'm gonna be honest, I kind of had a crush on him too. So I was like, wherever you're going, I'm going too. So we were in the hot tub, and we were talking, and then the room that Bob had, because he didn't stay with us in the big room.
Right.
He wanted his own room so he could do his own things, and he was smoking weed 24/7 in his room. And we were in the hot tub, and you can see his balcony from his room, and he was smoking, and I said to Mike, I was like, man, that guy is addicted to weed. Like, he smokes all the time. And Mike was like, yeah, well, all of them do. And I was like, not my dad. My dad doesn't do that. And he was like, yeah, your dad does. And I was like, no, my dad's like really healthy. Like, my dad takes vitamins every day. He's obsessed with his health. He has diabetes. Like, he told me he's only smoked one time and he never did it again. And then he was like, okay, why don't you go ask your dad? Because he literally is probably smoking on this trip. And I was like, what? So then I was like, okay, we are going to have a conversation. And I went up to him and I was like, do you smoke weed? And I think he felt cornered, and he was just like, no. And I was like, no, I know you smoke weed. Do you smoke weed?
What were you experiencing in this moment?
Well, I'm glad I get to talk because I wanted to address this. And it's true. I did not want her to really abuse things and to be careful, and it's 15 and 16. I think it's a little young to be trying things, and she's in formative years.
You were that old.
I had a bad element influencing me at 15 and a half. Okay. I admit they took a lot of hard drugs that I didn't touch.
Oh, okay.
And I think this was a good experience. And because I did tell her, I said, okay, let's sit down and really have this out and talk it out. And I think she also got to see a good microcosm of behaviors on that trip and I explained to her, look, there's different ways we might have a beer, but I'm not going to have a 6-pack. I might smoke a little bit, but I might not. If the surf's good in the morning, I'm going to be clear and go surf and work out and stretch. I don't want to have a bad head, when I do. I don't want to have a hangover. So if you look at Dave and Michael and I, we were always ready in the morning. We were clear-headed, where Bob was sitting in his room smoking the whole time. In fact, she got more waves as a beginner than Bob did, because when we got him to the beach, he was like, I don't
have a surfboard.
And some of it may have been he wasn't comfortable traveling. I don't know what it was, but she got to see different types of behaviors around it. And that's how I am now, and I've always been, is I'm not addicted. I'm not an abuser. I don't need anything to get through the day, whatever it is. And it's like, I think, because we have a cousin. She has a cousin who's like constantly like high all the time. So I kind of laid it out to her. This is like these things are around, and you have to decide how you're going to handle yourself. Alcohol's legal, marijuana's legal. Do you want to be addicted to something? Do you want to be dependent on it to get through the day? Mm-hmm. It's not healthy, And so I was honest with her. She was almost 18, and I said,
I was 19.
Yeah, or 19. I said, you're going to be around this. You have to make your decisions. And she's made good decisions and, got a great education, has a great career, is not a substance abuser, doesn't get hungover with alcohol, doesn't overdo it with marijuana and doesn't take hard drugs. So I think that's the reality of it. Is I kind of explained it to her, and she's, handled it very well. And it was time to like open up and really discuss it, At 15 and a half, I was uncomfortable with that discussion with her.
Right, but at the time, you were smoking by then, so...
Yeah, I mean, not like... Well, I'm like him. I don't need anything. I could go months and not smoke weed, and then there will be months where maybe I smoke no. If I smoke every day, I'm like, okay, wait, what's happening? Like, why do
Something is mentally
I need
off.
to recalibrate? And I feel like you know me as a person, even at 19, because I think that conversation might have gone differently if you saw, you know, a more addictive personality in me, maybe. I don't know. I mean, you're kind of lucky you got me because I'm not that way. So I don't know how you would handle it with someone who is like that, because you don't want to be like, no, don't do that, because then they're just going to go do it more. Or if you're like, well, then they might get addicted to it. I feel like that would be more
And like
tough.
the cousin we're talking about, besides just constantly smoking, his mother said, you know, he spends hundreds of dollars a month. And she goes, what do you spend? I said, maybe 100 or a couple hundred in a year, you know, or a year and a half. It's like, I said, and there's the difference. And so you need that substance, and also it's a financially abusive, you know, and it's a monkey, and I got to go get more, and
Especially now that it's like at dispensaries, it's more expensive.
Way
you cannot
more.
be smoking a joint a day.
Okay.
That's like $20 right there.
Speaking of buying weed not from a dispensary back in the day, that was the reason why in college, even when you had a card, it wasn't until it became legal where I was like, okay, I really don't need to go to a dealer or someone who knows someone who knows someone. Because if you went with your medical card, because I remember going, it was almost double or triple the price. I could get an eighth of weed or more if you were cute in college for $35.
I was going to say 35. 35 was
It was
the standard.
35,
And then
yeah.
you go in the dispensary and it's like $80.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's
You're like,
expensive.
I mean, I just spent like $275 today on weed, on all the stuff for
Oh,
420
my
episode.
Lord.
I have a great story about
Yeah.
getting weed with Bob. We love Bob. Okay, I'm not saying his last name, but we
don't
love
say
Bob.
his last name.
So we're on a surf trip to Cabo, you know, where my wife won at a silent auction at her high school, a really nice timeshare. And, you know, these guys, I sail with them and we surf. We're all water people, you know. And so Bob didn't want to take any marijuana on the plane because he's got to go through customs, you know, and stuff. You shouldn't be carrying anything going through.
Right.
And it's not legal in Mexico then anyway. I don't think it is now
I don't
even.
think it is now.
But anyway, it's really funny. He's freaking out. God, I want some pot. I really need some pot, you know. And I'm like, we're all kind of smirking. And he goes, I don't know where to get any down here. And we're on the beach, and there's the vendors with the you know, with the maracas and the little stuff things. He's like, I don't know, you know, what am I going to do? And I said, you want some? Really? I go, how much cash do you have on you? He goes, you know, at 20 to 40, you should probably cover this. What are you going to do? I said, see the guy selling the maracas and the stuff thing? I'm going to ask him to come over here.
We are the same. I would do that.
That's so
I've done
real.
that.
You
So,
would do that.
so he comes over and he's selling, and I go, mota, you know, por favor. And right away, he goes like this. And I said, it's for my amigo, my amigo, you know, and he goes, un momento. He spoke pretty good English, but I'm faking the Spanish a little bit.
It's pretty good so far.
He goes back to his car, comes back with, I mean, a gigantic bag of weed. I couldn't believe it. It was gigantic.
Like that big?
It was, I don't weigh it, but it was more than we could have ever smoked on a 7-day trip, you know. And
Oh my
I said,
God.
Bob, pay. I mean, and I don't know, they negotiated. It was somewhere between, I think it was 20. I don't know what it was, but dirt cheap. And you know, I was like, I mean, they were rolling the fattest joints, you know. We couldn't
God.
smoke it all. It was crazy. And Bob was in
my
hog
God.
heaven, you know. And it's just funny. So it's, you know, it's always been, this guy was probably growing it or something. I don't know, you know. And I didn't think we'd get in trouble, you know, because it's sort of unspoken. I mean, I wasn't dealing with a cartel person, you know.
Yeah.
He was trying to
Thank
make some
God.
extra cash, and but it was just hilarious, you know, how you would never get that much in a dispensary, even in Mexico, if it became legal for you know,
No,
that
It's
little amount of money.
always the souvenir or the braid people.
Yeah, you know, it's so funny.
I
They
can't with
always
you.
hook it. What?
So he was prepared for the clientele. This guy, you know, he was sharp. The vendor. He had the
my
conservative
gosh.
gig going, and then I said, where is it? He goes, I got it in my trunk. You know, and he comes.
He's probably like, this is just growing in my
And
backyard.
it must have been a half a
can't get
pound
rid
or
of it.
more.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
my
I should have taken
God.
pictures. They were rolling like cigar-sized
Oh my God.
joints, and then they were passing it out, and it was funny. It was really hysterical.
So my question for you, my next question for you is, because I've always thought about like knowing mom and how she is when it comes to, she doesn't smoke at all. Well, she doesn't smoke weed, I should clarify. And she doesn't smoke anything anymore. But, when I feel like I've heard a lot of like parents or moms be like, I used to do all these things and then I had a baby and then I stopped and then I got bored and then I started doing it secretly, like closeted. I feel like that was a thing. So my question is, well, kind of two questions. Did you ever stop smoking weed when you met mom or became a parent? And if so, did you pick it up? So let's start there. Like, have you always just smoked weed? What was it like when you met mom, who doesn't like marijuana at all?
I never really stopped or started. I would say stopped or started. It's always been around, and I'm very casual user of it. And so it doesn't really get in the way of my, social interactions with anybody. I'm careful about people who might be offended by it. I don't advertise, that I'm smoking all the time or anything. So I think with her, it was just, I wouldn't do it in front of her because it bothers her. But it never was an issue,
Were you ever high around her after
probably
smoking?
occasionally, sometimes,
Did she know?
Yeah, I think she knew, and she doesn't like it,
Okay.
But
Like, was there an instant where she was like, "Oh my God, you smoke weed?"
yeah, I've had those instances.
Oh, can you tell us about that?
Well, I would tell you it'd be easier if I didn't have to deal with that, but I deal with it, like among other behavioral traits. It's not just that,
But like, did it happen first when like you guys were dating? Like,
Not so much when we were dating,
okay.
but more, we were married a long time and things
Yeah.
evolved. Like, get to my buddy Bob again. He has a new girlfriend who they sit and smoke together, and they're happy as a clam. His other girlfriend hated it. And, they eventually broke up over that and other indifferences, but she doesn't like it. And she also has she goes, it's illegal. I said, Carol, I bought it from a dispensary. I got Camino.
She says it today?
A month ago or something. I said, I bought it from a dispensary. It's legal, and it's a sleeping formula. Excuse me. I'm not going to jail. You know what I mean? It's like, give me a break. But she has that, social stigma mentality that when it was illegal, in some states it's still illegal, and, but no, I didn't do anything illegal. I'm sorry. And I'd like to have a good night's sleep. Give me a break. I got a lot of stress going on, and, I take a lot of medicines, I've got medical treatments going on. I got some aches and pains from my knee replacement. Sorry. I mean, and I don't feel like taking, Ambien or something like that.
Right.
Goodbye.
Well, Ambien will have you in the middle of a bridge with like a plate of eggs
Yeah.
in the middle of the night. It's crazy.
Well, I asked this about mom and just kind of like your journey with marijuana, because like I remember a lot of guys I dated or friends I had in college, they were like, I'm not going to date a girl who doesn't smoke weed or isn't cool with it, because like I need her to be okay with it. And then like meeting Nico, it's been nice because we're both very much on the same page about alcohol, and we're both very much on the same page about marijuana. Like, I don't think he could be with someone who was like, no, I hate that you do this. So I guess like my question there is, was it ever like a deal breaker, or did you ever have relationships where they're like, oh, what, you do that? Like, no, I'm not going to be with you.
No, it was never a deal breaker. She accepted me for the way I was, and that was really important to me. In fact, when I first met her, I had a very good job. I had a company car, an expense account. I had very nice clothes. I always intentionally played everything down because I didn't want to be judged for anything material, And I also had a beater car. I used to drive these junky, beat-up Pintos because you could get them for nothing, and they were my beach cars, and they're full of sand. I had surfboard racks on them and stuff, and I never let her see the pharmaceutical high, well paid. You know, I wanted her to like me for me, you know, and she
So you pulled the wool over.
No,
Carol
it wasn't even just her. I never wanted women to judge me for my material possessions. You know?
But that's good though, because if you just hold on and just make it past that initial kind of discomfort with the Sandy Pinto, then
it's not just the Sandy Pinto though.
Well, she was really cool because she accepted the Beach Boy surfer, the Beach Boy surfer Marc, you know, and we got along, you know, really well, and you know, we got to know each other, and I was like that on all my dates. You know, I was single till I was 37, and
so you show up with the company car and nice clothes and go on dates with mom for like 5 years, and then marry.
No, she got to know me more, but the first few dates. I mean, you know, I used to have pharmaceutical samples in the trunk, you know, and like all kinds of goodies. And I always, you know, hid all that stuff. It's like, I don't want anybody to know, you know, I wanted to, and she accepted me for me. And she knew, you know, that I smoked a little bit, you know, and she probably did too. And she had friends, you know, before me. But no, she was very accepting of me and wasn't a jealous type, which I liked, you know, wasn't paranoid about me and trusted me. I traveled for work and stuff. And no, so that was never an issue. Okay. It's gotten to be more of an issue as we've been married longer.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know, control issues or something. Who knows what? We could go to a marriage counselor for that. You know?
Well, that's why we're here today.
I know. She doesn't want to go, but it's like, you know, when we weren't married, she had to accept me more, I guess. I don't know. But we've lasted almost 40 years. So we're not, I'm sure we're bonded, you know, pretty tightly. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that one could be a marriage counselor. I think there's control issues. I'm sure it's not just.
You've been married for 34 years.
Yeah, but we dated
together for 30.
We dated for almost 5. I mean, it's like, you know, she's always moving my stuff around, telling me I have too much stuff. I mean, so there's a lot of.
You do have.
Whatever.
I do too.
We all do. In life, you accumulate
You are
accumulate
your
things.
father's daughter.
We are material girls. Mm-hmm. Do you know what that is?
It's a song from Madonna.
Well, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, but the kids say these days, like, if you're into a lot of, like, merch or buying a lot of stuff, we're material girls.
Yeah. I mean, like, I'm a sportsman. I got, like, fishing equipment. I got paddle boards. I got a lot of gear, you know what I mean? And
that's true. You need a lot of stuff.
She doesn't get it, you know? It's like she has no clue how to hang a wetsuit. It has to be hung a certain way so you don't get holes in it in the shoulders. And it's like,
oh, see, I don't know.
You know, try to understand. What's that?
I don't even know that.
Yeah, it's like try to understand where I'm coming from because I need my wetsuits in good shape so when I go into cold water, they don't leak, you know? And it's like, just, you know, I rinse it in a disinfectant and keep it lubricated and the zipper's lubricated. She goes, what is that? And it's like, you want to put on a cruddy wetsuit, you know? It's like where there's stuff growing in the neoprene pores and it's like.
Oh, no.
So some of it she just, you know, she doesn't understand me that well as time has gone on. But we stayed married, and overall, we're pretty compatible, you know. She chases me around the house, and like, that doesn't go there, and that should go there, and
that's marriage,
you know.
Yeah, I think. Well, I'll find out.
Well, let's close with a question. What do you think is going to be the future of weed? Like, where do you see weed going? Do you feel like we're ever going to get to a point where it's completely destigmatized and everybody's normal about it?
Yeah, I think that's a good question, and I do. I see the trend. It's been hard fought. You know, I've watched over my 7 decades of life, you know, NORML and some of these other organizations have been trying to normalize it. There's definitely medical applications. I see you know, it amazes me when you walk into a dispensary and there's counseling, there's products, there's different applications, there's different delivery modalities. So I see it evolving, and I think, you know, there's going to be more research into it. It definitely has medical applications. You know, just minor aches and pains. I shared a little bit of that. What was that thing we had?
Stizzy?
The tizzy? Stizzy, you know. I had a little ache and pain in my knees, you know, and it's like, I feel more relaxed, and that's good. It's a Sunday. And, you know, so that's an interesting delivery device. You know, there's no chemicals from anything burning, you know. You burn glue on paper, it has some toxicity, you know. So I see it evolving and developing, you know, more into the future, and it's probably a good thing.
Do you think it'll ever become like federally legal, like alcohol, or do you ever think that it'll be like equal to alcohol?
I do. I think it will. I think I've heard talk about that, maybe Biden's even was talking about it, I think, during the pre-election stuff. But you really shouldn't ruin people's lives over it. It's not like, it's not a dangerous thing like heroin or, heavy narcotics.
No one should be in prison right now for the possession
Absolutely
of weed.
not.
That is so crazy to me.
And, and that's the ruining, the deviant smithing. You're ruining people's lives. And some of these states where, I remember this no tolerance at all thing, and I remember up in Seattle, some yacht got impounded because one of the crew had a roach in the ashtray. And it's like, that's a little overstepping.
Wait, what happened to them?
They impounded this charter yacht. There was a lot of drug smuggling up in Puget Sound. And it's like zero tolerance. Come on. It's like you have to interpret situations, this we're not smuggling anything. And it's like, that's almost jackbooted thuggery. You're impounding, and the courts eventually let the property back to the owner because it was the owner of the charter operation. But that's kind of stuff you don't want to see. Over prosecution, stigmatizing people, ruining their lives and stuff over something that's really harmless.
Did you ever see anyone go to jail for weed growing up?
Yeah, I don't remember specific people, but I'll give you a good story about me.
Oh.
Okay. When drug laws were really ridiculous, this was with Dave. We were at a party in the West Side, and we got arrested for being in the presence. There was marijuana smoked in the party. Wasn't even smoking. I'm telling you, I was at the party. It was a big party. It was really noisy, and a judge lived next door, and called the West LA police, and they came down in force and started pulling people in, asking questions in the squad car. They had a tape recorder, which wasn't really legit. And this all got expunged, isn't it, on my record?
Wow.
But they were looking to see who had what in there. And they were, hey, man, we're going to investigate this demon weed. We hear there's a real big... And I got booked and arrested for that. It was called being in the presence. They wouldn't even touch you today for that. Yeah.
And did Leonard Levine...
we got it expunged. It was a joke. It was a nuisance thing.
That's such a bullshit law, being in the presence. Because anyone can walk in and be like, smells like weed, you're in the presence.
Yeah. It's I'm sure that happened to a lot of people.
Once it got to court and I got a lawyer, my dad was pretty sophisticated, and we got it expunged. But it was like, that's overreach. That's an overreach. Yeah. And that's all evolved away. That law wouldn't even be, I don't even know what's on the books anymore. But that has to stop, because you're dealing with something I don't think anybody's ever died from it.
It's a non-criminal, it's not
violent
offense.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no victims. So I see, normal and normalization, or agencies are moving it forward. In a lot of states now, it's medicinal. A lot of states allow it, a small amount to be used, which is reasonable. We're not talking about people dealing, 100 pounds and moving it across state lines. That's criminal.
Right.
If it's regulated, there's state revenue coming in, and you're allowed to have a small amount. That's rational and reasonable. That's kind of how I operate. The alcohol I've been given for my wedding, I still have the bottles from decades ago. I don't even touch it. But to be able to possess small quantities of these types of things marijuana should be at least as legal as alcohol, even less dangerous. They don't even know yet what when they test for you, what impairs your driving.
Right.
And sometimes it could be tested 3 days later and you're not even impaired.
Yeah.
So the laws have to get in line with the social side of it, and we're in a free society, and this is not a dangerous thing.
Here's a idea of the week.
Okay.
Idea. The term gateway drug should probably get removed from our vocabulary.
Are they still saying that it's a gateway drug?
I feel like that's why states still have not legalized it, because that is the only argument people stand on is well, if we legalize weed, then what? Then people are going to want to legalize everything else, and they're going to, they're going to start doing heroin and meth and stuff like that. And it's weed is not a gateway drug. I think that there's a gateway time era in your growing up like
Yeah,
adolescent
but
age.
it could be a gateway just purely because teens have access to weed and we don't have access to something else. Like if we have access to if we got access to shrooms or whatever, and that was very normal
Well,
to
like,
get
why
introduced
isn't
to,
alcohol
like,
a gateway drug?
or alcohol? It's
Like-
like that's what we have access to. So of course it's going to be the first thing we try.
Yeah.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to lead to other things down the road.
Yeah. What do you think?
Oh, it's definitely not a gateway drug. I mean, actually, if you have to go find a dealer like I did, in my era when I was young, you're dealing with criminal element, and they may want to foist other things in your face. I saw that happening. I think if you go to a legitimate dispensary that's licensed by the state, you're probably not going to be exposed to that element. So I think it's just the opposite.
That's real. Oh my
So
God.
the
Good job,
gateway drug, I don't agree with that at all. I think that's just, again, political minutia.
Period.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming on. This was
Thank you.
amazing.
It was fun.
We have to bring you back. We got to do like a father-daughter specific
Oh, maybe Father's
episode.
Day.
Yeah.
Yeah. What?
I love my daughter.
Is there anything else that you'd like to leave us with? Anything else you feel like
Any
you
wise
haven't-
words?
Yeah.
No, I don't know. I think we've covered a lot of good topics, and I was very glad to be here. Thank you for having me
Thanks for coming.
and let me express myself a little.
Yeah, I love that. And
Me
I love
too.
you. And I love you. And then with that,
Bye,
bye,
girlies.
girlies.
Hang loose.